Okay, let's start from this question today. So A is the square of sine x plus cosecant x, and B is the square of cosine plus secant x, and C is negative tangent square minus cotangent square minus 2. Then what is A plus B plus C? Okay. So let's see what is A, everybody. A is equal to the not square, A itself is equal to, right? A is equal to sine plus cosecant square. Well, that means sine square, right? Sine square of x plus
2 sine cosine.
2 sine cosecant. Well,
Yes.
sine and cosecant will be 1, right? When you multiply,
Yes.
sine times cosecant is 1.
Yes.
Because
So
sine times 1 over sine. So it will be just 2, right, Shabab?
Yes.
Plus cosecant square. Cosecant square x. That is A, Shabab. How about B? B is equal to, again, cosine square of x.
Yes.
And same as 2, right? Because cosine times secant is 1, so 2 times 1 is 2, plus secant square of x. Secant square of x. And how about C? Let's write the C right here. So negative tangent square of x minus cotangent square of x, and then minus 2. All right, let's see what is A plus B plus C. A plus B plus C, sure. Okay,
Yes,
let me choose.
plus cosine squared is 1.
Yeah, let's look at let's look at sine square, right? Plus cosine square is what? 1, right?
And 2 plus 2 is 4.
2 plus 2 is 4, but there is minus 2 here.
Oh, so 2.
So we have a plus 2 only, right? Okay, now look at here. Cosecant square, everybody, minus cotangent square. Do you see that?
Yes, it will be 1.
Right? We should remember those identities. Cosecant square minus cotangent square will be 1. So we have plus 1.
And the same
similarly,
with
right? Similarly,
secant and tan.
right? Secant square minus tangent square, right, Shiva? Secant square minus tangent square is another one. So total will be 5. So A plus B plus C is 5. Okay.
Teacher,
Yes?
at A and B, why did you put plus 2?
Okay. Can you square it, Shabab? Do you know how to square it? Expand the square, Shabab. Do you remember that? We have sine plus cosecant square. Okay, let's square together. Sine square plus, plus. Okay, guys, who's going to help your friend, Shiva?
We expand the bracket sine squared plus 2 cosine times sine plus
No,
I mean
2 sine times cosecant.
Yes, plus cosecant squared. And then we have sine times cosecant, which is sine times 1 over sine. That means 1. And we already have 2, so we multiply the 1 by 2.
All right. Was that clear answer enough for you? Who asked
Yeah,
the
it's clear.
question?
Now I get it.
Very good. Okay, let's look at this one, Shabab. We have 2 sine square of 2x plus 2 cosine square of 2x. Let's see what is a, everybody. Let's look at the a. So a is equal to 2 is the common factor, as you see. Sine square of 2x plus cosine square of 2x. Now, do you see anything here, Shabab?
Yes, it will be 1 times 2.
Yes, sine square of theta plus cosine square of theta is 1, right? Whatever the theta is, it doesn't matter. So 2 times 1 is 2. Basically, a is equal to 2. All right. So let me just show this one is equal to 1. Maybe somebody wants to see that. And the b, let's look at the b, everybody, is 3 times secant square of negative x. Well, it is the same as secant square of x. Secant square of negative x is the same as secant square of x. Why is like that, Shabab?
Even function.
Huh?
Because it's even.
Even function, yes. And then minus tangent square of negative x is also tangent square of x.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because it's a squared, so the minus goes.
Well, the tangent square is even function. So tangent is odd, right? Tangent is odd function, but tangent square is even function, Shabab. So therefore, we can just remove the negative x. So it is the same as tangent square of x. Okay. Now, Shabab, do we remember secant square minus tangent square?
Yes, 1.
Yes, this is equal to 1. So 3 times 1 is equal to 3. All right. So now what is a plus b?
5.
A plus b is 5. A plus b is 5, Shabab. All right. What is next? Let's calculate sine of 1 minus cotangent plus cosine divided by 1 minus tangent. All right. So let's see what we can do, everybody. So let's change cotangent and tangent in terms of sine and cosine, Shabab. So let's see, first one is sine x divided by 1 minus cotangent. Cotangent is cosine x.
Over sine.
Yes, over sine x. And plus cosine x divided by 1 minus sine over cosine. Sine over cosine, Shabab. All right. So the first one is if you just multiply, everybody, in the first fraction here, if you multiply the numerator and denominator by sine function,
it will be sine squared over sine minus cosine.
yes, it will be sine squared of x divided by sine x minus cosine x. Is that clear to everybody? Huh? Shiva? In the first fraction, I multiplied numerator and denominator by sine x. And in the second one, I will multiply by cosine x. So we'll get cosine square of x divided by cosine x minus sine x, correct?
Yes.
Cosine x minus sine x. Okay, now I'm going to add these two fractions, but what I noticed that I have almost the same denominator, but you know, one is sine minus cosine, another is cosine minus sine. Well, how can I make them both the same?
We multiply one of them by minus.
Yes. So let me just keep the first one as it is. Sine square of x divided by sine x minus cosine x. And this second one will be minus cosine square of x divided by sine minus cosine. All right, Shava. Just make sure you understood this step. Everybody? Clear? All right. So now what we got? We got sine square of x minus cosine square of x divided by sine x minus cosine x.
Yes. We can expand and simplify the sine squared x minus cosine squared x. It will be
How can we write it?
sine x minus cosine x times
Factorize, right?
sine x plus cosine x.
Yes, sine x minus cosine x and sine x plus cosine x.
Over sine x minus cosine x, and we simplify.
Yes, sure. Of course, in the exam, you know, you should see these steps without writing, right? Just do these steps in your mind, you know, imagine, and then just write the solution immediately. You know, it is sine x plus cosine x, right? This result you should see from this part, Seva. From here you should see this result, right, Seva? So you don't have to write, you know, to see exactly what's happening, because it is clear to imagine what's going to happen, right, Seva? So don't write it again to, you know, to lose your time. In the major exam, not in the quiz, Shabab. In the quiz, you are supposed to write every step. Next. Let's try to simplify this, Shabab. Cosine square plus tangent square minus 1 divided by c sine square of x. Okay. So what do you think, Shabab? Well, we can look at it as
cosine squared minus 1 equals to sine squared.
cosine square minus 1 is
Sine
negative sine square, Shabab. Right?
Yes, yes, yes.
1 minus cosine square is sine square.
Yes, yes.
Cosine square minus 1 will be
Minus sine square.
minus sine square, yes.
Yes, and then we
Or,
write the tan
right?
as the cosine and sine.
Okay. So now let's do that. So tangent square, okay, just keep tangent square. Let's write it first. Tangent square x minus sine square x. Right? Where is minus sine square coming from again? Cosine square minus 1 is minus sine square. Okay, everybody. 1 minus cosine square is sine square, but cosine square minus 1 will be negative sine square, of course. All right. And divided by sine square. Divided by sine square. So maybe we can write it as, Shabab, tangent square
Sine over cosine. Sine square over cosine.
Over sine square. Yeah, let me write one more step, everybody. Sine square x minus sine square over sine square is 1, right, Shabab?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's write the tangent square, Shabab. Tangent square is sine square over cosine square x. And now you are dividing by sine square, so that means you are multiplying
sine
by
square.
yes. Minus 1. Shabab, you see sine square is cancelled, so you get 1 over cosine square. 1 over cosine square is
secant square.
secant. Well, maybe we should write it. It's too much. So let's write it first. So it is equal to sine square is cancelled. So we have 1 over cosine square, because I'm sure somebody will ask. Minus 1. So 1 over cosine square is secant square x minus 1.
Which is tangent square.
Anybody knows that? Yes. It is tangent square, huh, Shabab?
Yes.
All right. So correct answer is tangent square x. Okay. Any question, Shabab? All right. Let's see what is next. 1 over secant plus tangent plus 1 over secant minus tangent. All right. So let's just do the addition of two fractions, right? Addition of two fractions. So it will be, we are going to multiply secant minus tangent times 1, right? So it is secant minus tangent, secant minus tangent, and then plus secant plus tangent, correct?
So take this
Secant
into
x plus tangent x. Divided by secant plus tangent, Shabab, secant x plus tangent x, and secant minus tangent. Secant x minus tangent x. All right. You see, we have minus tangent x plus tangent x is gone. So we have 2 times secant x, right? 2 times secant x divided by secant plus tangent times secant minus tangent, which is secant square x minus tangent square x. Of course, secant square x minus tangent square x is what? 1, right? So this is equal to 1. So basically, it is 2 times secant x. 2 times secant x. Well, can you see how many more exercise waiting for you, Shabab? So many more exercises are waiting for you. So we cannot go through all of them, of course. So it looks like, you know, now I'm sure we gave you enough, you know, a practice to see what to do, you know, how to solve the questions, how to simplify. I'm sure that much exercise enough for this section 7.1. So if anybody has a spatial question, you can ask me. Otherwise, I'm gonna start the next section, Shabab, which is 7.2. We are gonna study the sum and difference formulas, trigonometric formulas of sum and difference of the angles. Okay, so I will close this section. So I'm gonna switch to next section, Shabab. Let's switch to next section now, which is 7.2. All right, so cosine, sine, and tangent formulas for sum and differences of angles. Sum and difference of angles. For the cosine function, we have cosine of a plus b, if you have two angles, a and b. So cosine of a plus b will be cosine of a times cosine of b minus sine of a times sine of b. So we have opposite sign here. If you have a plus b, you have subtraction here, minus. But if you have a minus b here, then you have plus here. So opposite signs. So cosine A, cosine B, plus or minus, whatever, sine A, sine B. So that is how you should remember the cosine formula. Cosine, cosine, plus or minus, sine, sine, okay? Cosine, cosine, and then plus or minus, sine, sine. That is the cosine formula. But for the sine, everybody, we have, you know, alternating cosine, sine A, cosine B, and then cosine A, sine B. So we are switching A and B, right? Sine A, cosine B, plus cosine A, sine B. That is the formula for sine for sum, and sine for the difference of angles. In the sine, Shabab, we have positive here and positive here, same signs, negative here, negative here. But for the cosine, we have opposite signs, you see? Plus here, minus here, plus here. Okay. Of course, in the detailed proof of these formulas are available in the textbook. If you like to go through the details of proof, of course, that is that would be nice actually to go through the proof steps. If somebody is interested. Okay, for example, if somebody wants to calculate cosine of 15 degrees, that's something we didn't know before, right? Cosine of 15 degrees. Well, if 15 is the difference of 45 and 30, right? 45 minus 30 is 15 degrees. Well, then I can use the cosine of the difference formula, right? Cosine 45, cosine 30 plus sine 45, sine 30. And since we know all these values, right? These are the famous angles, we know that. So in the, when you put all the values in the proper places, so you will get the answer as root 6 plus root 2 divided by 4, which is the cosine of 15 degrees. So this is the cosine of 15 degrees. Of course, you're not supposed to memorize, by the way. You're supposed to understand how to get it, right? How to calculate it. Okay. Let's see. Next. Find the exact value of cosine of 5 pi over 12. Well, I'm sure most of you will just switch to degree and then, solve as a degree, Shabab. In the addition of two fractions, you see, 5 pi is the same as 2 pi plus 3 pi, of course. So you can write it as 2 pi over 12 plus 3 pi over 12. Well, when you simplify 2 and 12 will give you pi over 6, and 3 and 12 will give you the pi over 4. So basically, 5 pi over 12 is the same as pi over 6 plus pi over 4. That will give you the 5 pi over 12. Now use the cosine of, sum. So for this formula, we need to subtract, right? Cosine of pi over 6, cosine of pi over 4, minus, right? This is positive here, so this should be minus. This is the cosine formula. And then sine of pi over 6, sine of pi over 4. Well, again, since we are supposed to know these values, so careful calculations will give you root 6 minus root 2 over 4, everybody. All right, that is the cosine of 5 pi over 12.
Doctor, can you hear me?
I cannot hear you, Shabab.
No, you can hear me, doctor?
Yes.
Yes, finding the coterminal angle or reference will help me here or no?
No, you just, in this case, you just need to understand, this simple step to write it 5 pi over 12 as pi over 6 plus pi over 4.
Just spread them.
Yeah, just, write it as a two fractions.
Got it.
It's just a matter of understanding. 5 pi is equal to 2 pi plus 3 pi. Well, maybe I'm sure you will ask maybe, I can write 5 pi as maybe pi over 12 plus 4 pi over 12. Yes, pi plus 4 pi is 5 pi, yes. But the problem is, one is pi over 12, another is pi over 3, right? So the one is okay, but another we don't know, right, Sheba? Pi over 12, that we don't know what is cosine and sine of pi over 12. That's why we prefer writing as 2 pi plus 3 pi instead of pi plus 4 pi.
Doctor,
Yes.
can I change the 5 pi over 12 to a degree and solve it?
Yes,
I think
you
it's
can,
easy.
of course. In the exam, especially in the exam, please change it to degree, because I'm sure it will be much
Easier.
more simple for you.
Yes.
Okay, next. So they ask you to calculate cosine of 87, cosine of 93 minus sine of 87, sine of 93. Well, definitely, we don't know these values, right? Cosine of 87, cosine of 93. These are not the famous angles. But if you look at the expression, Shabab, expression is a cosine formula, right? It's a cosine of the 87 plus 93. You see? So you don't have to know what is cosine of 87. You just need to understand the picture. The picture is the cosine of 87 plus 93, correct? Well, 87 plus 93 is 180. Well, cosine of 180 is negative 1. So that's it. All right, Shiva. Somebody might give you a different numbers, by the way. Let me just give you the same question with just different angles. Because 87 plus 93 is 180, right? 180. Well, can I write 180 as a sum of the other numbers, Sheba? For example, 77, right? Plus what? 77 plus
37. 37, is it?
103, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, 77 plus 103 is equal to 180 again. Yes. So now I can ask you, calculate sine of 77 cosine of 103 plus cosine of 77 sine of 103. So what is this, Shabab? Here is the question for you.
I think it will be sine 77 plus 103.
So this is basically sine of 180, right?
Yes.
So this is basically sine of 180, Shabab. What is sine of 180?
0.
0. You see now, when you see these strange numbers, so don't get scared, right? Because yes, I don't know what is sine 77. I don't know what is cosine 103, but it's a complete formula, right? It's just a sine of 180. And now we know sine 180, which is 0. All right. So when you see the picture, right? When you see the picture, you should understand the formula, Shiva. That is the question here. All right. Well, if somebody likes to calculate cosine of 75, well, how can I write 75? Well, it is a sum of 45 plus 30, of course. So you know how to, use the cosine of the sum of the angles, right? So the rest is easy for you, right? You can do that. Cosine of A plus B. And I have cosine of negative 105. Well, it is the same as cosine of 105 because cosine is even function. So cosine of 105 is the same as 60 plus 45, correct? Yeah. So it is just cosine of 60 plus 45 formula. Cosine of A plus B formula. And now pi over 12. Again, Shabab, unless not in my quizzes, okay? When I ask you in the quizzes, you cannot switch to degree, but in the major exams, if there is any more midterms or final, just go for the easy technique. Just switch to degree, Shabab, since you are, unfortunately, you are not very good in these radian issues. So pi over 12 is the same as pi over 3 minus pi over 4. How do you do that, right? Let's see. Pi over 12. Well, pi is 4 pi minus 3 pi is pi, right, Shabab? Okay, let's divide by 12. Let's divide by 12, Shabab. Now, do you see that? So pi over 12 is pi over 3 minus pi over 4. And similarly, a 7 pi over 12 is the same as pi over 3 plus pi over 4. You can understand, right? Pi over 3 plus pi over 4 is 7 pi over 12. So you can use the cosine formula now because you know pi over 3 and pi over 4. Well, how about cosine of 7 pi over 9, cosine of 2 pi over 9 minus sine 7 pi over 9, sine 2 pi over 9. Well, it is a cosine formula, of course. Cosine, cosine, minus sine, sine. That's a cosine of A plus B formula, right? A plus B. Because there is a minus here. So it is a cosine of A plus B formula. So 7 pi over 9 plus 2 pi over 9 is pi, of course. So cosine of pi is negative 1. Right.
Doctor,
Yes?
can I have, for example, sine minus cosine?
Then it is the minus cosine, right? Right? It will be the minus cosine formula. let's leave this one for a while, so I am going to look at it later, Shabab. Here is one quite nice example from the previous major exam. How do we simplify? Sine of pi over 6 plus theta plus cosine of pi over 3 plus theta. Now let's remember sine formula, Shabab. Sine of A plus B formula. Do we remember that? So it is sine of pi over 6 cosine theta,
Theta plus,
and then
cosine
plus
theta.
cosine pi over 6.
Yes, and sine theta.
Eva. Perfect. Sine theta. And then plus, let's use now cosine formula. Okay, let me change my colors so that. So let's use the cosine formula, Shabab. So it is cosine pi over 3 cosine theta minus sine pi over 3 sine theta, right? Okay, let's see. So do we know sine of pi over 6, Shabab? 1 over 2, right? Everybody knows that. 1 over 2 times, oh my God, my screen is getting crazy again. 1 over 2 times cosine theta and the plus
3 the pi, I mean root of 3 over 2.
exactly sine theta plus
half
it is half
times cosine
cosine
theta
theta
minus
minus
root of 3 over 2.
root 3 over 2 sine theta.
Yes.
Looks like some things will be cancelled, right?
The root of 3 over 2 sine theta.
Yes, we'll cancel plus minus here, right, Shabab?
Yes.
So we have half cosine plus half cosine, right? Half cosine here, half cosine here. So result is
Cosine.
cosine theta. Okay, nice, interesting. So answer is cosine theta. Okay, it's just a matter of do you remember, if you remember the formulas, right? So, but it is a nice question. Yes, a practice, you know, how to calculate sine of 75. Of course, sine of 45 plus 30, so which is sine 45 cosine 30 plus cosine 45 sine 30. And we know already these values. We are supposed to know that, right? So and the answer is root 6 plus root 2 divided by 4. Again, it is not to memorize, okay? Again, Shabab, do not memorize. Just understand how do you calculate sine of 75. Okay, what is the exact value of sine 40 cosine 160 minus cosine 40 sine 160?
To be sine of 40 minus 160, I think.
Yes, it is sine of A minus B formula. Yes, sine of 40 minus 160, which is sine of negative 120. So since sine is add the function. So it will give you negative of sine 120. So it will give you negative root 3 over 2. We know how to calculate sine 120, right, Shabab?
Yes.
Do we remember that?
First
Right.
angle.
First angle.
Yes, reference angle in the second quadrant. So sine of 120, Shabab, sine of 120 is root
Positive.
3 over 2. It is the same as sine of reference, yani sine of 60. And that negative is coming from the negative. You need to keep the negative, right, Shabab? So result is negative root 3 over 2. Well, maybe let's just stop here. Okay, Shabab. To continue from this page, inshallah. Shabab.
Thank you, Doctor. Have a nice day.
You too, Shabab.
See you
Thank you,
tomorrow,
Doctor.
Doctor.
See you next class.
أهلا أهلا شباب.